Okay,
Hello,
we're
ladies and
live.
gentlemen. Are we live?
Sorry. Yeah, we're live. Go ahead.
All right, hold on. Let me hit continue. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Eric Planey,
Hi, I'm Lucas Finko.
and we, drumroll please, are the Pirates of Clean Tech. Boom, 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 boom. Arg. Lucas and I are getting together. We are two friends that have known each other for about 5 years, and we are here to discuss relevant and recent headlines in the news regarding clean tech, clean energy, and ESG. And with that, we want to get any comments and feedbacks, and we'll talk about that at the end of our program. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lucas, and he's going to start talking about some of the more interesting articles that he's seen over the last 7 days.
All right, so here we go. We'll jump right into it. I wanted to start with one from Green Tech Media here, which is one of my favorite sources for clean tech news. U.S. residential U.S. residential storage shines in the first quarter. Believe it or not, given the COVID slowdowns. Larger battery installations off to a slow start, though. NAB's fourth consecutive record, so this is interesting. So this is residential solar. This is distributed, so it's on the edge of the grid. It's at the end of the utility wires. That would be the distributed. So here's a Tesla battery on the side of a house here. Not a lot of meat in this, just that, installations haven't been disrupted by COVID that much. It turns out there's an exception in California for utility installations or energy-based installations. Those didn't get interrupted by COVID and the virus lockdowns. So this was just a good story to see. I definitely am pro storage. Pretty much at every level in the grid, we could use storage. So this is a good development.
So two thoughts come to mind. First as a comment, I would say that probably first quarter, the COVID crisis in America was only the last couple of weeks of March. So I suspect, though, that the installation on the retail and residential level probably did get severely impacted in the second quarter because people were just not going into other people's houses. So I think it was a great first start. I guess my question for you is this, and I'm really kind of a novice in understanding distributed energy. And we talk about storage now, but originally distributed energy, people put solar panels on their roofs to sell it back into the grid. Now they have this option of putting something on their wall. Has the price optimization changed at all for people who have solar in a distributed basis on their rooftop in terms of either keeping it or selling it? Is the decision changed at all? Is this changing the paradigm of distributed energy?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. There's certainly a lot more uncertainty about retail net metering, right? So you might not get as much money from your solar panels as you used to if you're just connected to the grid. So if you can put that in your own storage right at the edge, then you do get retail offset, right? Because you're not buying electricity from the grid. You're not moving it back and forth from the grid. You're just saving it and using it yourself. So it may be in response to that. I think if some of these, retail net metering tariffs go away, you might see a huge pickup in this. The other interesting thing they noted was that, maybe it's interesting to see how they'll do next quarter, and if residential sales really works well online. Is not having in touch person-to-person sales important to this? See largely in-person sales. They talk about right in here. So that'll be interesting to see if this market can transfer to online sales.
I think it will. I think just maybe the second quarter of the year is probably going to be a big hit. But good companies know how to adapt, and consumers also know how to adapt. So I would say we talked about the fact offline that energy storage is something that you and I are both fascinated about, both big proponents of. So as this show evolves and matures, we're probably going to have a lot of stories related to energy storage, both on the utility scale basis and then also on the residential basis. So
Definitely.
Please, we encourage people to write their questions and comments below so that we can, address them or find articles that address them as time goes on.
I think it's interesting too. I think they mentioned in here that the outages due to those fires that started PG&E started having forced outages so they didn't create fires in those windy canyons, California. That drove a lot of people to really consider their solar installations. And most people don't know a typical solar installation just gets wired into the grid. So if the
Right.
grid goes out, you lose power, even though you have solar panels on your house. So if you have a battery, if you have, a energy management system on your house, then that doesn't happen to you. You can cut the grid. You have your battery, you have your solar panels, you're good. So I think, sadly, crisis drives investment in these kind of things. It's the same thing with diesel generators, right? Um, People ran out and bought diesel generators, when there was a hurricane. Um, it's interesting.
So just to let you know, the house that my wife and I live in right now, we bought a year and a half ago. It came with a propane back generator. And just a month ago, our neighborhood was out from a bad windstorm for just about 36 hours. And so it was essential, especially in this environment where our refrigerators are stocked because we weren't going to the grocery store often because of COVID. It's essential to have that type of backup and resiliency. So it's a sad consequence of climate change is that there seems to be more volatility. And so having storage from a resiliency standpoint at home, along with your business, is going to be more and more essential in coming years.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I've been looking for an alternative to a diesel or a fossil fuel backup generator, and it's just really hard to find. I know there are a couple of options now that weren't there a couple of years ago. You can get basically about, a box with a handle on it that has an inverter and has a charge controller and it has this battery. You plug in your solar panels, it can charge. You get AC, you get DC, USB power right out of it. You get normal, wall plug electricity right out of it. So that's really interesting for me to see. But it looks like your price point is going to be like $500 to $1,000 to get into such a thing, which is a lot higher than just a cheap diesel generator from Home Depot, right? So,
Right. And I also think the reliability of those are maybe a little bit suspect. I don't know if how long they actually last. I've heard mixed things about those small units that are really kind of essentially made for your IT systems at home. And that's really about it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay, I'm going to move on. This is an article from Utility Dive. Efficiency significantly cheaper than natural gas, they report, according to a DOE study. So I found this to be rather interesting, actually, because I have actually done this study myself to compare the value of efficiency versus the cost of natural gas. And actually, I, in the past, have found the exact opposite, that efficiency is significantly more expensive than natural gas, especially at the depressed natural gas prices we have nowadays, let alone 5 years ago when I performed my study. So I was very interested to read this. They quote here that energy efficiency programs run by utilities saved energy at a cost of about 40 cents a therm. Okay, so this is, I find this to be a little misleading because they actually link here to the new research by the DOE's Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, which you can actually click to and go to, which I've just done here. So here we are at the Berkeley Labs. Energy efficiency continues to be cheaper than natural gas. And now there's a little bit more detail in here that clears things up for me. Uh, yeah, so we see utility efficiency programs at an average cost to the program administrator of 40 cents per therm. Okay, so this phrase here, to the program administrator, is the big deal for me. Okay, so this is only the kind of administrator's cost. That's the utility that's administrating the program, or the a state administration like NYSERDA, Vermont has one, Vermont Efficiency. That's only their costs. And they say here, this does not include any participant share of costs. So that means only basically the incentive amount. They're only counting the incentive amount in this 40 cents. They're saying it only takes about 40 cents a therm to incentivize someone to spend their own money to be more natural gas energy efficient. So I find this to be a little bit misleading. Yes, it's true with that caveat. They somehow left that caveat out of here. If you look at it on a total cost basis, meaning I don't care if the participant pays it or the utility pays it, the total cost, it's many, many multiples higher than 40 cents a therm. And it does not make sense from the total cost perspective, in my opinion. But we still do it, and there's still a lot of interest and a lot of value in reducing fossil fuel usage, obviously. So in general, I'm still supportive of energy efficiency programs, but I just thought this article was quite misleading.
So my question or comment when you sent me this article last week. So I spent some time doing economic development in Ohio during the first shale boom in the earlier part of the 2010s. And as a result of the shale boom, we're starting to see a trend in a state like Ohio and the rest of the Midwest where most of their energy production was coal and is now switching off and it's turning on to gas. So even if you're skeptical or if you're a true green follower and you want nothing but complete renewables, you saw this benefit of gas coming online and turning off coal. So as a result, carbon emissions throughout the United States were actually dropping because we had so much gas supplanting coal, primarily from a marketplace economic standpoint, not even from a government incentive standpoint. But the first article that you referred to in Utility Dive effectively said that this is bad news for gas because there is so much merchant gas coming online right now that maybe we may be, as it says right there, these power plants and pipelines are likely to be unnecessary by 2035. My question or comment is, I think there's another thing that could be happening in America, and that's a reindustrialization of this country. I really think that there could be a new wave of smart manufacturing that takes place. This doesn't mean hundreds of thousands of jobs are going to come onshore, but I do think the need for electricity generation is going to be greater. I'm not sure if this article really addresses the potential curve for demand over the next 2 decades to the point where it states that gas could be unnecessary by 2035.
Yeah, I mean, good points. I would like to see if load comes onto the grid, it be more flexible and it be more adaptive to a renewable grid in the future, where energy will be more available when the sun shines and the wind blows, right? And we've already seen Google go that way. We've seen cloud resources that are cheaper when energy is cheaper. I think that's what I would like to see. If you're going to redo it and you're going to start over and you're going to do it, you might as well do it right, right?
Correct. I
Yeah.
think, and we're going to talk about the grid in one of my articles, I think, in a few minutes. So this is timely and
Awesome.
very relevant.
All right, so here's the next article. This one from Calistech or CTech by Calculist. Is it Calculist? I don't know.
I'm not,
An interesting study about. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
it just sounds like calculus class, which is something I really don't want to talk about right now. So there's no association with calculus class.
No, I hope not. Calculist. Okay. Maybe somebody can explain that to us. That I'm not. Oh, I think it might be Israeli. That's why. Okay, so a recent Tel Aviv study. Basically, what these guys are doing is, and I've always wanted to see this study done, so that's why I brought it up here. This is just a fantastic outcome. We're basically just trying to copy nature the entire time and in converting energy into a storable form, right? So nature already solved this problem. It's able to take sunlight, convert it into energy, store it, and indeed that's where fossil fuel comes from, right? It's stored energy from plants. So why can we not kind of figure out that process and hijack it? And so that's exactly what these people were able to do. They were able to go into kind of plants, grab the whole, electron transfer mechanism in photosynthesis and kind of hijack it and put a wire right into it and get the electricity right out.
Wow.
So I've been looking for this kind of a study. Now they have this illustrated thing here. I'm not sure any of these are real, but it looks to be from their experiment bench. So very interesting study. I'd really like to get into the details a little more. They also say you can, instead of pulling out electricity, you can just go straight in and engineer it to produce electrolysis to get your hydrogen and oxygen for your renewable space shuttle launch. I know you were working on that last week. So here's where we're going to get the hydrogen. So yeah, see, they simply attach an enzyme that produces hydrogen and you get hydrogen. So I thought this article was fantastic. I'm so happy to see this study. I've been waiting for the study for years. Um, yeah, yeah. You could also produce ammonia. Ammonia is a big output of fossil fuel industry. Right now, they get it from fossil fuels. So for fertilizer.
Wow.
So if we could replace that, that would be huge also.
So I think my two comments are, first off, that photo I don't think was part of the experiment. I think those were from the set of Star Trek. I think those are IVs of Mr. Spock's blood that they just happened to put in the photo.
It looks like the medical bay on Star Trek. Yeah.
It absolutely does. So I think the state of Leonard Nimoy maybe questioning the use of this photo in this article.
It's no, it's alien blood that they got. They're testing. Yeah, okay.
Mr. Spock's blood was green. If
Oh, was it? Oh, I forgot.
I don't think we ever saw it, but I think they discussed it.
Oh, okay.
So that's question number one. Question number two, it seems like they're focusing only on the plant aspect and not on trees, which obviously they're all part of nature. But just curious about that, only from the aspect that people are talking about trees and carbon capture right now. And I didn't know if it doesn't sound like there's going to be any.
Oh, no. Yeah, totally different things. This is the chlorophyll. So they're trying to hijack photosynthesis. I think they talked about seaweed. I think they want to use kelp. But you could use any plant for this. Yeah, but you wouldn't be locking away any carbon here. You would just be displacing fossil fuel production with this.
Is there any timetable associated with their next stages on this? Because this is incredibly fascinating. I've never heard of it myself.
Yeah, 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
They need a 5 to 10 fold reach in economic justification.
I think we really need to give a shout out to Israeli clean and regular technology incubation. I was quite honored to be part of a diplomatic mission to Israel in 2010. And I saw some incredible technology coming out of that country. And they're always trying to find markets for it. So if anyone is smart, they keep an eye on Israeli technology because it's just truly fascinating.
Oh, Better Place was 10 years ahead of its time. What was that, like 2006 or something? It's still ahead of its time today. So
Better Place, if I recall, is the portable battery for electric vehicles technology.
yeah, the removable batteries, yeah, which is
Yeah.
a fantastic idea. Like you would have an EV, but you wouldn't own the battery. You would lease it. And when you want a recharged battery, you go to the station and they take it out and they put in a charged one and then you drive off. 30 seconds.
Sadly, I think they didn't make it, and I think they actually may have had issues. We'll have to have our researcher confirm it. And when we say researcher, that's really us offline. But I think they did some betas in island economies, and the economics on an island economy made sense because of the limitations with the infrastructure physically. But
Yeah, but it still wouldn't work today. I mean, it's 15 years later. So, yeah.
Could be.
All right.
All right.
Last one for me, I think, right? I just saw this recently, 5 ways to flatten the duck curve with GIS. So GIS is Geographic Information System. So I thought this was interesting. This comes from our friends at Esri who make GIS software. If you don't know what the duck curve is, this is the duck curve. So this was a projection from many, many years ago, 2012, of California's net electricity load. And you can see this big dip here. This is the belly of the duck. So there's the duck's tail and there's the duck's head late at night when the sun goes down and load comes back up. And you can see in the middle of the day, this giant belly of the duck is due to a lot of solar output in the middle of the day that would offset load. And so this was a little bit of a concern back then, mainly because of this giant ramp we might have in this far future year of 2020, which we are currently in. So there's still a concern of how do you ramp up, 10, 12,000 megawatts all in an hour or two here. And so this is Esri's response for a couple of different things you could do. You could bring the head down with energy efficiency, which is a good idea. You can also take a notch out of the head with demand response. You can just ask customers to reduce at critical hours. Uh, you can pad the duck's belly. So that means when you have a lot of sun and you're in the bottom of the belly, you could take some of that solar and just charge batteries and then use those batteries late at night to flatten the head, which is also a good idea. And transmission, which we'll talk about later, which I'm a huge fan of, by the way. You could also just attach more geographic areas, and then hopefully during the day when you have a lot of solar, you can ship it to places that need it. And then in the evening, when you don't have solar and you have load, you can bring it in from somewhere else. And another item, the final thing to point out is diversity, which I really like too. Trying to have different forms of generation. So try not to go 100% solar, not 100% wind. You want a mixture of different technologies. You want a mixture of different consumers that consume electricity at different times, or like we said, responsive loads that respond to signals about, hey, there's a lot of solar. Use energy now, right? So I thought this article was great, really practical.
So two things come to mind. One is as a disclaimer, no ducks were actually harmed or injured in the discussion of this article because some of their suggestions here have some pretty nasty things relative to the duck. And then secondly, in all seriousness, I'm kind of curious about what happened with the duck curve over these last several months with so many people working from home and kind of changing that 4 to 8 p.m. or 4 to 7 p.m. paradox where offices are still lit up, factories are still lit up, but people are going home and putting on their electricity. And I'm kind of curious how the duck curve is going to look, at least on a temporary basis over these last few months. And then what happens over the next couple of years as work from home all of a sudden accelerates in popularity because of this unprecedented activity we've had over the last 2 months.
Right. I mean, that's a good question. We should do some research on that. I would imagine it's gotten worse because a lot of commercial loads got taken out. Those are the loads in the middle of the day.
Right?
So you would have had more, well, the same solar generation with less loads, so that the belly would have gotten deeper. And then, the residential loads at 7 p.m., those haven't gone down. So if anything, they might have gone up. So this has probably been exacerbated by COVID.
Anyone in the utility industry watching this, if you have any comments, we're happy to accept those. We'd love to hear a little bit more about the duck curve in wake of COVID over the last several months.
Yeah, or share any links. I know we covered last week. The NISO has seen a reduced curve all throughout the day. So I don't know, maybe that's the case for California, and we'll have to look.
Fascinating, to use this Mr. Spock term.
Yeah. All right, I think that's it for me. Right now we're on to Eric.
Yeah, now this one actually is a pretty complicated article for this small brain of mine. But this comes out of Clean Technia, another great clean tech website that and newsmaker that we follow. iPhone charging index shows the potential of Liquid Star's platform for wireless grids and the beauty of vehicle to grid technology. Now, this is a long article, and we're not here to kind of be a proponent of any one company's technologies, but we do want to discuss when something interesting pops. And this graph right here was something really fascinating. I think both Lucas and I have a soft spot for emerging markets and impoverished parts of the world that could really benefit from the implementation of clean tech. And in the United States, when you look at the iPhone charging index, we don't even think about when we charge our iPhones how much it costs because it's really such a small part of our monthly utility budget. But in third world countries or emerging markets like rural Nigeria, it could actually be $5 to $10 a month to charge your iPhone, which is a lot of money for people living on much smaller wages, less than sometimes several dollars a day. So a company co-founded by several gentlemen wants to revolutionize the off-grid electricity market with something called the Decentralized Autonomous Utility Platform. And if you want to, can you scroll down a little bit, Lucas?
Mm-hmm.
This is just absolutely fascinating to me. But again, decentralized energy is going to be a way to solve the problem in a lot of emerging market and third world countries that don't have a robust grid right now. Just to go off for a second, it's during the reform of Central and Eastern Europe after the Berlin Wall came down, their phone infrastructure was horrible. So they actually leapfrogged it by adopting cell phones much faster than the rest of the westernized world because they had the ability to do so. And I think we've seen that in other countries as well.
Right.
This system here is kind of like a decentralized distributed energy generation system that should be, they say, electricity source agnostic. So it's almost like putting a miniature transformer into a neighborhood or a community, like almost like a microgrid in itself. And
Hmm.
that will empower people to have the ability to charge their phones at much lower rates and give people greater access to news, information, and educational tools. So when you think about electricity being a dynamic technology right now, as opposed to the staticness of electricity being grid-based for so many years, these types of technologies are coming into play and they're going to give people empowerment that they would not have had 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. I really like this article. Uh, I can tell right away it was written by a physicist because only a physicist would know what quantum tunneling is, and only a physicist would use it as a metaphor. Um, so yeah, and the other thing is there's so much interesting information jammed into this article, which is another key aspect of kind of physicists communication. Um, it's really hard to get through this article and really comprehend everything that they're trying to communicate. So, um, yeah, look, they have these portable battery storage devices that they're going to charge. Here's what it looks like inside. It's actually quite small. That would just be enough to charge a phone. I do wonder about their numbers. Their numbers look, there's another portable
A little aggressive.
battery pack. Yeah, the numbers seem a little off to me uh, here with the 94 cents. So I pay all in. So if you take my full bill and divide by kilowatt hours, I pay all in about 13 cents a kilowatt hour. And I don't know, my phone's battery is about, what, 10 watt hours? So I'm paying less than a penny, way less than a penny to charge my phone. So I don't know where they get this 94 cents from, but this is great. I think there's a lot of interesting tech in here. There's a lot of interesting ideas. I do like the leapfrog concept that, why would they build out this giant grid and install these old tech generators that burn fossil fuels when they can just skip that? They can install one of these with solar panels and a wind turbine. They can charge batteries and they can pull the power out whenever they need it. And if something were to happen, like there were no sun or no wind, they could run a diesel generator and charge it. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I like the optionality associated with the technology, like you said. I think these are the solutions that will propel parts of the world that just didn't have the access to these solutions in the past.
Yeah. So this is like a 8,000 milliamp hour battery. I mean, most phones are 2,000, right? So you could charge probably four phones with this small device. It's hard to see the scale here, but I imagine it's about, these are like double A size. So, about that big, right? So
Right.
a lot of cool tech in here. Cool.
Awesome.
Really cool.
Okay. Since
Next
you're
one.
you're the man with the plan, what's the next article?
All right. This is from Charged Electric Vehicles Magazine. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Charged is one of my favorite publications, as we talked about in the pilot episode that we did last week. I'm a big proponent of electric vehicle technology. I should have a qualification here. I do have a minor stake in a company working on solid state battery technology, so I want to put that out there so that people can read this objectively. But the future of solid state battery technology, what's close to commercialization and why it's still years away. This is an article that I too had to read several times over because there has been a lot of overusage of the definition of solid state battery technology. And that kind of clouds what the current environment is in the development of solid state batteries for electric vehicle. But just to put it in layman's term, because that's the only way I can speak about this technology, a car battery is really a box filled with liquids, right, with anodes and cathodes, and obviously there's separators and capacitors in there that create the electrical charge that charges the starting of your car, and then that creates the flow through for generation. Lithium ion batteries are going to be the current state of electric vehicles. We've gone from lead acid to lithium ion in EVs. And lithium ion have a lot of power density, a lot of power generation, but unfortunately, there is a little bit of a risk curve there in terms of safety. We know that lithium ion batteries can overheat sometimes quickly. I think we all saw this in the original smartphones that we all had, whereas sometimes if you're charging, you can actually feel your phone get hot. And one thing I found in an electric vehicle class I took last year in London, they didn't really solve that problem of overheating. What they did is they solved it by tricking you and telling you only had X% left in your battery. You actually have more than that. But every time your battery gets up to fully charged, it actually slows the pace down of the charging. So when you talk about electric vehicles and DC fast charging, for example, okay, you can charge 80% of your battery in the first 15 minutes. The reason you can't charge that last 20% is overheat and fire risk.
Hmm.
Solid state batteries are in theory going to be much safer because the materials used in them will not have the same fire potential and overheating potential. The term is actually called thermal runaway. But the technology isn't quite there to still have the power discharge and the energy density. So that's being worked on quite aggressively. I like this story because it gives you a 101 on the materials that are being tested right now. It sounds like, I believe, most solid state batteries are kind of graphite based right now, which is pros and cons. Pro from a safety standpoint, but they're not as powerful and they don't have as much density from a power generation standpoint as lithium ion batteries. The holy grail, as you can see on the bottom here, would be developing a solid lithium product, paraphrasing slightly. And I think it's fascinating. I think a lot of research is being done at the automotive OEM level, and we could get to the point where we have a commercial vehicle ready for market, maybe in the next 10 years. This is my speculation. That would be good to go for solid state instead of lithium ion on a liquid basis.
Yeah, I'm trying to find where they had that, maybe an estimate of the years. Yeah, I also found this article to be jam-packed with a lot of good information, very dense and long. So you get 2 kudos this week for having good articles. Yeah, they also have a unique battery testing technology, this company that they talk about, Wildcat. Yeah, very interesting. Again, yeah, I'm huge support of any kind of battery research technology. This is really interesting. So would love to see it. Any kind of safer, faster charging, higher density would be great.
And again, this kind of goes into the Venn diagram of the intersection of electric vehicle research, energy storage research. So our first article about energy storage on a residential basis absolutely would benefit from developments in solid state technology. So they certainly can.
It's safer to put in your home too. You don't want something that's going to start a fire in your home.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, no, let's skip that one. Let's make that the last one. Let's go to the
Okay.
Motley Fool.
Motley Fool, all right.
So I like this article. This was from the Motley Fool, which has, I think, been around for quite some time now. The next big obstacle in renewable energy is a big opportunity for investors. And of course, the Motley Fool is geared towards investors and not actually for kind of the technology individuals following it from an engineering standpoint. But the first thing that really popped to me was we're going to be talking about the grid used to transmit electricity, and we're talking about it from an investing standpoint. And so when the Motley Fool is actually talking about the next big obstacle for renewable energy is going to be the grid and transmission, I think it's fantastic that, we're really showing that renewable energy is kind of making the mainstream in terms of energy development, economic development, and consumers' appetite for green energy. So that in itself is fascinating. I won't get into too much detail, but effectively, there's a lot of need for updated transmission in the United States coming from new sources of green energy. We also know that right now, the green energy pipeline in its original development was in parts of the United States that didn't have the highest population density. And in the case of wind, was actually generating power in the evening. So not optimal. So there again comes not only the need for transmission, but the need for storage. But in 2020 alone, the nation could add 20,400 megawatts of onshore wind capacity, an additional 12,700 megawatts of utility scale solar capacity, according to US EIA.
Yeah.
So, Lucas, you're our utility guy, so I'm going to turn this one over to you. And just tell me what your thoughts were after reading this article.
Yeah, this has been known to insiders for quite a while. This is one of the kind of open secrets, I would say, of the clean energy revolution, that it will require a large amount of transmission capacity, precisely for the reasons you mentioned. And they do give an example here. In Texas, they built a lot of wind energy out in West Texas, and then they didn't have enough transmission capacity to get it over to the load centers in East Texas, like Dallas and Houston. And so a lot of that energy just got curtailed. They just dumped it because they couldn't get it to the load centers. So yes, I 100% fully agree with this article. Transmission will be key. Yes, I agree that most renewable resource is far away from load centers like big cities, big industry. So transmission will be key. A lot of transmission gets a regulated rate of return also, so it makes a great investment, which is why it's here in the Motley Fool. So if you're looking for a good, reliable investment that promotes a clean energy future, transmission is what you want. I don't have any tickers. They have a ticker here, Excel Energy, which is a large conglomerate. So I don't know if there's specifically working transmission. Same thing with Eversource, it's a utility. So they don't specifically work in transmission, but I'm very excited to see this. If you know about this, you are in the minority and enjoy your good investment. So very cool to see this.
Excellent. So I'm with you on it 100%. You know, again, modernization is something that America needs in so much of our infrastructure.
We need to get some articles where we disagree vehemently. We'll work on that for next week.
Yeah, you know, maybe in our second season, right?
All right.
Nobody wants to see us arguing. They want us to see us come together.
Well, we are pirates, right? I mean,
Yeah, we're pirates to get along. You know,
all right, next. We were ready.
yeah. I think this one is just really quick. This one popped, kind of past our internal deadline for submitting articles to each other. But it was fascinating. It looks like Germany is going to be requiring all gas stations to provide electric vehicle charging. This comes from Electrek publication. This is really big news. We're going to be following this quite closely. I found this fascinating for a couple reasons. One is, you know, EV charging has a different set of logistical needs than pumping at the pump. So where you have a gas station doesn't necessarily mean it's the optimal place for EV charging. And also consumer habits are going to be changing, or will be changing, or are changing. And so while I think this is a noble effort, I don't know if this is the best solution out there, simply to have EV charging at a gas station. Usually a gas station can only support 4 or 5 cars at once. And if EV charging doesn't get down to under 5 minutes per, you know, rapid charge for a majority of it, you're running into other bottlenecks and logistical issues. So I think this is something I need to absorb a little bit further. I want to say hats off to Germany, though, for having the foresight of thinking about a national answer to the EV charging grid. I think that's something we talked about in our pilot episode last week. It's a problem that we have, is that there's no consistency among or across the United States right now in developing EV infrastructure, charging infrastructure. So maybe this could be the solution, but I think it requires a little bit more thought.
Yeah, I agree. And they make that point here, like, do you really want to hang out at a gas station for 30 minutes? Like, you know, the article seems to make sense at first, and the policy does, until you start to think about it. And so they make the point that it might be better like at a shopping center where you're going to hang out for a long period of time, or a hotel or a restaurant where you can get a good charge while you're getting a meal. You know, there are already some along expressways where people stop for a pit stop and get a meal and use the restroom, and then your car's, you know, got another 100 miles of charge on it or something like this. So I've thought about this a lot too. I just think there's better places to put mandates. One is any parking lot with solar panels. I don't know why there's not an EV charger. It blows my mind. I drive my EV to the library. I park it under solar panels, but I can't charge my car. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's a parking lot. It's where cars sit and wait, and you have DC power generation, so it wouldn't even have to go through an inverter. You wouldn't even get inverter losses. You could just have DC to DC charging you know, and you could charge retail rates and people will pay it, and you don't even have to talk to the utility. It doesn't even matter what the utility says. The utility's got nothing to do with it. You sell it right there. So that would be a simple mandate I would do before I would do this,
And I
personally.
also think we're quite close to being at a point where we're going to have inductive charging economically. So you don't even have to
Yeah.
plug it in. You can just pull over a placemat in the parking space, and you're talking a plate-to-plate transmission of electricity. This is something, again, I think that's the technology we should be looking at. I know a lot of people are looking at driving habits. I think there was a thought and correlation that autonomous driving is going to change our driving habits. So maybe that's part of the reason they want to put them in the parking lots. But nothing like a pandemic where people are not allowed to get close to each other that make you want to be back inside your own vehicle with nobody else in there. So we have a lot to discuss on this one. We'll certainly be following it.
Oh, well, we'll have to get an article about Hevo. That's an inducting charging company that we're good friends with the CEO. So we'll have to. They moved to manufacturing finally. So we'll definitely have an article on that. We'll talk. We'll look at their technology next week. Yeah.
And I don't think you and I have any ownership of Hevo, so that wasn't a shameless plug.
Well, it was shameless, but
It was
whatever.
shameless in our typical shameless.
And he's
So,
got a cool name. Anyhow.
so we have one more article that we thought was just relevant to today's society. And it's from Green Biz, and it was a piece written by Sarah Golden on June 5th. And I really like this because I spent a lot of time growing up in a Rust Belt city of Youngstown, Ohio, which today has 50-50 split inside the city limits between a white and black population for the most part. And there's a lot of anger and frustration in this country. And I think it's fair to say Lucas and I are certainly supporting the peaceful protesting going on because we want to see an equal playing field for all citizens of the United States. And as much as there's been great strides in US history for civil rights, especially coming out of the 60s, it seems like we have not gotten to that next level. And when we're working in something like clean energy and clean technology, in which we're talking about revolutionizing a new technology in this country that's going to be great for all society, I think we need to be cognizant that this could be a vehicle for bringing up all people, regardless of race or creed, and really to help people that need an extra hand and using clean technology as a catalyst to get there. So I think this is a great article. I recommend reading it for people who just want to kind of combine the social unrest that's taking place right now and the moral justification for that social unrest with something that we're all passionate about, which is clean technology.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This is an important issue today. I'm a big believer in a meritocracy. Uh, I believe it's, you know, your success in life and your greatness that you're able to create should be about you and your drive to do so. And your drive to be successful should have nothing to do with the color of your skin or your sexual preference or any other kind of prejudicial characteristic. It's solely about you. And it's good to see that, you know, people can join together to try and do great things, to try and rectify these. And it's good to see that we can get together and work against kind of air pollution issues from the fossil fuel industries um, with these activists. So it's good to see.
Agreed, agreed. I think it's a great way to end our show for this week. This is our first formal episode. We did a pilot episode that probably a lot of people will not be seeing because it was really rude, and my wife yelled at me for having like coffee cups in the background. So, we had to take care of that problem. That was a big one. But in all seriousness, we thank you for your time, and we'd like to have your comments and suggestions, as this is kind of an evolution for us. And I think we need to bring up a couple of disclaimers, one of which is the views and opinions expressed by both Lucas and I do not represent any organizations or companies that we're currently affiliated with. These are our own thoughts and opinions. And also we want to say to express our thanks to the various media outlets that we referenced in these very good informative articles. We encourage people to go to those websites, possibly subscribe if you want, but we certainly will encourage the greater fostering of information flow coming from these great sources of media.
Yeah, and as always, we would love to hear your comments and feedback down below. And feel free to click subscribe. We're going to be doing this every week, and then you'll get a notification of when our new videos post up. And also click the like button if you like the content and you want to see more of it, because we would like to know.
Fantastic. So with that, I think the Pirates of Clean Tech are signing off and heading to harbor for a nice cold one.
Arg.
Arr. Talk to you later.
Adios.